Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Man Up and Own It podcast, where we discuss situations and experiences that make men uncomfortable and explode on the ways that we can make ourselves more confident and empowered so we can get through those difficult times in our life. And today, I have a very special guest, the man of money, my friend, Ian Kirker.
How's it going? Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, I'm excited to have you here. In fact, we started our friendship off in a very abnormal way because we didn't know each other.
Yeah, very story-worthy, I guess you would say.
Right. But I think it was a means of us understanding that we are both men of our word.
Men of principle.
Absolutely. We were asked to meet in a very specific way, and we were actually the only two that followed through.
A specific location, a specific style of dress, a specific time, and only you and I adhere to those two. So.
Right. And what does that mean to you as a man to be a man of your own word?
I mean, it's really just honoring yourself. Like, your word is your bond. So if you're not going to stand by what you say, then who would?
And who's supposed to believe you after that, right?
Exactly.
I know I was brought up on the idea that a man only has two things in his life: his name and his word. And if his word is discredited, then his name is discredited.
Ooh.
And if his name is discredited, no one will believe his word.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that old folktale, The Boy Who Cried Wolf.
Ooh.
You can only mess up so many times.
Right.
Then it means nothing to anybody.
Then you just got to move to another location and hope to God nobody finds out who you are.
Start all over again.
And unfortunately, with today's society and technology, it makes it even harder for people to change their persona. But it's not saying that they can't. So what I do is I help men improve their image. And I think you would agree with this. The way we present ourselves is very impactful, and people make judgment calls based on what they see.
Yeah, you kind of hate to admit it, but the reality of it is you have 5, 10, 15 seconds to make an impression on somebody the first time you meet them. How you dress, how you carry yourself, it's incredibly impactful.
Absolutely. I call it nonverbal communication or visual influence.
Visual influence, yeah.
And how can we utilize things that are easily manipulatable to help us influence the way people perceive us?
Yeah, like well within your control.
Absolutely.
Like, certain things take time, but the matter of dress, that could be a matter of 5 minutes.
Absolutely. And you talk about things that might take time, and you are an advocate of fitness.
Absolutely.
In fact, that's something that we share in common, that we both love the sport of bodybuilding, or not necessarily the sport, but the concept of bodybuilding and sculpting the physique. I like it in the means that I can display to the world that I value my body and I value presenting myself in a very strong form.
Yeah, I agree. Not just the strength that you present, but it's also like a physical display of effort, discipline, and consistency. So you can't purchase your way into a strong built body. You have to earn that entirely on your own.
Even people that were like, he uses steroids.
If anything, they're using that excuse as a crutch.
Absolutely.
Like, you look at the top tier athletes in the world, steroids or not, there's a very finite difference between the two. And it's really a matter of a massive outlay of effort and consistency, and then steroids get you an extra 5%.
Right. It's interesting, that concept that people use it as a scapegoat of their own inability to hold themselves accountable and be consistent. Like, oh, he uses steroids. Well, I know a lot of people that use steroids and they still look like shit.
Yeah, or a lot of people who use steroids purely based on medical need.
Absolutely. That's a very good concept that you throw out there. In fact, the majority of men of the age of 30 and above have the lowest levels of testosterone in our own history in the United States right now.
We've truly hit a masculinity decline. So this is a funny caveat. Just last week, a friend of mine from high school, he competed in the Olympics. So literally the highest level of performance. And just last week, he called me up and said, hey, I got a 172 on my testosterone. And for frame of reference, most people, he's 29 years old. He should be somewhere near 750.
Yeah.
And he's coming in below my 67-year-old father. Like, something's up.
Right. Now, that could be a lot of things.
Absolutely.
It could just be his genetics.
True.
But what are some of the things that you would suggest for men to do to improve that in their life?
I think the easiest thing is to look at your daily habits. Like, what are you eating? How are you sleeping? How are you managing stress? Because those are well within our control. And, I work so much, I can't get a good hour's sleep, blah, blah, blah. You're making excuses. You need to make better use of your time. Set aside a minimum of 7 hours of good quality sleep.
Yep.
I have a 9-week-old son, and I was able to get 7 hours last night.
Isn't it interesting how people rationalize their life, and in reality, it's their own decisions that are setting them up for failure?
Yeah, absolutely. I could have stayed up and had an extra beer or watched a movie, but I went to bed at 9 o'clock knowing fair well that my son was going to wake me up between 2 and 3 times in the night, and I had to get my good hours of sleep in order to have a productive day.
So it sounds like to me that you plan accordingly for the situations that you are destined to face.
It's funny you say that. Financial planning is my background, so it's almost like I take things into consideration and how they play out in the long term.
Right. And it's the reason I called you the man of money. And I believe that finances are a direct reflection of how we plan our life.
Absolutely.
How we manage things. Now, I'm a fitness guy. I'm a clothing guy, and it's the same thing. I find relativity in almost everything that we do, and it all reflects back to our basic habits.
Absolutely.
Now, when I'm looking at an event and how the message that I want to send to everybody, I plan accordingly on my clothing to fit the objective. Can you explain how that happens in finances?
Well, in financial planning, the simplest thing we can do is ask you, what do you want to accomplish? Because if you can't answer that simple question, I have no goals to give you. I have no steps to take. So the first thing first is you figured out what you wanted to portray, and then working backward, figured out what to wear, how to present yourself. It's as simple as knowing where you want to go and taking the proper steps to get there.
Right.
So I think that's step one. Where are you trying to get?
And that's a lot of that people just don't know. They don't even know what it is that they want to get. And it's almost like they make excuses not to define that because that's scary.
Yep.
It's scary to think that I want to have my own house. And so they make excuses, and then they go create poor behaviors in order not to hold themselves accountable, whether it's buying a house or losing 20 pounds of fat or even just putting on 5 pounds of muscle. The scariness is actually probably achieving it, and then what?
That's true. What's next?
So when it comes to money, what is something that someone could do that would easily help them determine what it is that they want to accomplish?
I guess take stock of your day-to-day lifestyle. What does that cost you now? And in today's dollars, think about what you want to do in retirement, or what I like to phrase it as financial freedom. So once you have the option to work, whether you want to or not, you can step away. How would you like to spend your time? How much money would that cost you in today's dollars? So maybe you're picking up new hobbies. Maybe you're traveling. Those are things that would add to your normal expenses, right? So you have to take those things into account. That's pretty much the beginning of it.
Okay. And then once you understand, like, we'll just dive into, like, I want to travel. Would you say that there are ways to make traveling actually more affordable? And I'm not talking about, like, pinching pennies.
Sure.
But would you say that there are ways to make travel pay you?
Well, one of the things we went down just today, I had a meeting with a client. investing in property for yourself and to generate income when you're not utilizing it.
Yep.
Like, I know that's a bigger step than most people are ready to take. I mean, most people are looking at home number one, but once you achieve that goal, like you said, what's next? Home number two. Home number two doesn't have to be, oh, sometimes we vacation in the Hamptons. Home number two could be, I don't know, 4 hours down the road at a lake that you enjoy.
Right.
And then when you're not occupying that place, you rent it out and you create income.
Bam.
Passive, generating income while you're not using it.
And
It's
you're
simple as that.
using logic to leverage yourself, to set yourself up to better your situation. Like, for example, I do speaking events in places like El Paso, and the houses there compared to here in Phoenix are a fraction of the price.
Yeah, we have a crazy demand here in Phoenix. Places like El Paso, I don't know what the difference is. Outside of the taxes on your property, they're selling homes like they're going out of style. It's crazy.
So that's something that someone can not only do to leverage their future, but also create confidence in who they are. Because they made a sound financial decision. And that's not saying that they have to do it alone.
Absolutely not.
You know, in my other episodes that we talk about establishing a quality group of men around you that will hold you accountable to a better standard. And I believe someone like yourself, someone that is an expert in finances, is essential to have. Now, you can't have the knowledge of everything, but you can sure have a lot of people that you trust.
Definitely.
So what would you say is a quality in a financial planner or someone in your line of work that would be a golden goose?
I would say it's hard to pin down one specific thing, and I hate to lean on this crutch, but being a registered fiduciary, meaning you're obligated to do what is most best for the client first and foremost, lest you face legal repercussions, losing your job, losing your license, things of that nature. You're basically saying, I am going to operate as an honorable, good man, or I'll face repercussions from the law. Like, I already would have operated like that, but now our firm is registered at that level. It's just a second tier of, we're going to do what's best for you first and foremost.
Can you say that term again louder for the people on the other side of the screen?
A registered fiduciary.
Did you hear that? Fiduciary. I know it's a funny word for us to say, but it's not something that we're taught in school.
Definitely not.
And people in your line of expertise, for the average American, it sounds intimidating, but in reality, it's not. And like, you're just a normal guy.
Absolutely.
Like, you've got a kid.
Got a kid.
You got a wife.
Got a wife.
You have a house.
That I do.
You probably drive a truck.
I do drive a truck.
Oh my
Guilty
gosh.
as charged. Guilty as charged.
He's an average American, guys. But he's not average because he takes care of himself. He takes care of his community. He takes care of his family, and he wants the best for everyone. And that's a prime example of that. We can all rise up and be more than just average. We can be quality people, quality men, helping each other lift up and be better individuals. Would you agree with me that if we all stepped up and became the best versions of ourselves, the quality of our lives would increase?
100%. I mean, there's not a doubt in my mind. It's kind of like you can't help someone unless you're in a position to do so. So you have to elevate yourself into a position where you can turn around and pick somebody up.
The thing that I like to reflect back on is you've been in an airplane, right?
Absolutely.
Of course you have. He's an American. He flies, right? And gas prices are just crazy. So why would I want to drive?
Absolutely.
Anyways, you remember when the stewardess and we're getting ready to fly and they go through all the safety precautions and they talk about the air mask that drops.
Yep.
And we've already established you have a wife and you have a kid. That stewardess is now telling you that you must put the mask on who first?
Myself.
Oh.
Crazy concept.
It's amazing to think that we have to be the best versions of ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves to the utmost first before we can actually help anybody else.
Yeah. in order to make sure that my wife and son are breathing, I have to be breathing. What?
No.
Mind-boggling.
And how many men don't do that with themselves?
Well, I think it comes from a point of they don't see themselves as worth taking care of to begin with.
Absolutely.
So then how can you help anybody else?
And unfortunately for our society right now, the media has projected us as expendable, that we are just a paycheck. And I'm here with this podcast and with my friends that you will find on this podcast to tell you otherwise, that you are valuable, that you deserve to be the best, and your family deserves to have the best father, role model, example that they can get. And then that will increase our communities. But the way that we go about that is, 1, eating better, 3, training, exercising, and his line of work, financially fit. That's something that we've talked about.
Absolutely.
That's a fabulous F word, financially fit.
Yep.
So are there any other things that you would recommend for somebody to do that might help them be more financially fit?
I'm going to take a morbid turn here just because it's been so fresh.
Okay.
Literally 7 days ago. And this is something we preach once we get into the financial planning process with our clients. It's life insurance. And this sounds kind of weird to talk about financial fitness and then you turn around and talk about life insurance.
Now you're not
product.
You're not telling me like one of these like creepy financial guys that I go to like at a networking event and he's like, "Do you have life insurance?"
No, definitely not. Although that too. Yeah, I'll do that too though.
All right, tell me more.
So basically we look at the trajectory of your life, right? And if something were to negatively impact that, like a death, how that completely derails not just life, the plan for you, but for whoever relies upon you.
So you're not just talking about life insurance just for me. Like if I was to be driving to work and a psycho like we have in Phoenix
We have terrible drivers.
comes out of nowhere, T-bones me and kills me, and then my family gets money for them to have a better quality of life.
To sustain the life they're used to, at the very least. That's one tier. This is a whole second tier. And this is where it gets kind of sad.
Okay.
So the reason I'm talking about this today is because last Thursday, someone I used to work with, he had 3-year-old twin boys, and I unfortunately have to say had, because after about 11, almost a year of fighting a leukemia, he lost one of his boys. And so how you're talking about if you were to have passed away, how your family would continue on, I'm asking you, like if your daughter were to have passed away yesterday, would you be at work today? Would you be filming this today? Absolutely not. So how do you sustain your own life,
Right.
knowing that the bills are still coming in? You know, the car still has to get paid for, the mortgage still has to come out, the electricity still has got to stay on, but how are you going to work? So having some type of coverage on your children is very important. Now that's the worst case scenario. On the best case scenario, these policies can function in an interesting way. They almost look like a 529 in which the policy can grow cash value over time.
Okay.
So in a perfect world where no children ever die, as they age, the policy accumulates cash. Let's say they hit 25 years old and it's your wedding fund. Or they hit 30 years old and here's a down payment for your home.
Right.
Or they make it all the way to 65 and guess what? Dad has put away $100 a month for 60 years and now you've got a retirement fund.
Right.
You don't even have to be there to pay for your kids' retirement.
Right.
So they can be utilized in many, many, many different ways. But first and foremost is cover the worst case scenario. Once the worst case is covered, everything else is gravy.
And be honest, what's $100 today?
A night out, even a lunch out.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we talk about like priorities, right? And what people put as immediate priorities. And now you're going to find out from me, I'm not a big sports guy.
Me neither.
You know, it used to be cool when I was a kid to play sports, but watching grown men play with balls,
Sounds a little wrong.
Not my thing, right?
Out of context, sounds a little wrong.
Absolutely. And it is wrong to think about the amount of money that people put in to go watch these events.
Yes.
And that could be something that when they sit down with someone like you and you go through their expenses and you can find opportunities for them to make a better investment for a life that they want to live in the long run, not the immediate gratification.
Absolutely. And there's often discrepancies between what you tell me you want to do and what you're actually doing. And I have to highlight these negatives. Like, you're spending thousands on bullshit, and you're telling me you can't save $500 for something that you love.
Right.
There's no way.
Right.
You have to take stock of yourself.
So now I would like to challenge you in this idea. I believe men know this. I believe that they know that they could be doing better, but as they choose not to do better, it actually creates self-doubt. In the back of their mind, they're choosing to do things that are actually harmful to themselves, to their family, and to the future of both. And because they know it and they're burying it, justifying it, they're actually creating self-doubt, which creates hesitation, which creates imposter syndrome. So then when the opportunities actually arise for them to take advantage of a situation, they hesitate.
Absolutely.
They don't perform at their best because in the back of their mind, their subconscious is telling them, you're a loser. You didn't do what you said you were going to do. And that's why I respected you the day that we showed up to meet each other, that you showed up and you did what you said you were going to do.
Suited and booted.
And you continue to display that. So for the men out there that are watching this, it's a prime example of be a man of your word. Do what you say you're going to do, because not only does it impact the perception of you from others, but it also impacts the perception of you to you when you look in the mirror. So I would challenge you on this podcast to evaluate yourself. Who is it that the man that Ian Kirker wants to be known for at his funeral? And define that into the best detail, to the greatest detail that you could possibly do. And then assess yourself. Am I taking the actions that I need to be known as that man? What is my legacy that I'm leaving behind? Is it what I want it to be?
There's a couple ways I can put this. And there's a way that I want to be known socially that I think is arguably more important than any accolade or achievement, because who I am to my friends and family is more important than what my job or my bank account tells me. But the secondary aspect of that is I want to be able to provide. So I want to be the kind of person who, if I have $20 and you have $0, we have $20.
Nice.
You can only do that if you achieve enough to provide for your friends and family. That being said, I want to quote my wife on this one. I want to be known as the guy who has golden retriever energy. So if you come into a house party and there's a golden retriever in there, what's the first person you're going to walk up to? It's not a person. It's that awesome little happy-go-lucky dog.
Right.
So you want to be known as like that nice, happy-go-lucky person, always having a good impact on people, putting smiles on faces, and just being genuinely good.
You know, right now, if I didn't have this amazing outfit on, you would see goosebumps on my entire body, because that's absolutely right. Who doesn't love that dog that's just excited to see you? That unconditional love of just wanting to see you smile.
Just being that good friend.
Absolutely. And again,
Bringing others up.
why?
What?
Why wouldn't we want to do that? Other than the fact that misery loves company.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately for us, we live in a society right now that's like crabs in a bucket. The crab starts to escape. He looks back at his brothers, and his brothers see it. And instead of pushing him out and knowing that he's going to help him get the rest of them out, they reach up, grab him, and pull him back down into misery. And I believe that we can make a change.
Absolutely.
But by setting the example and being the higher standard and creating relationships like this and holding each other accountable to do just that.
It's like doing good perpetuates doing good.
Right. It's an amazing concept, right? Just like evil begets evil. Violence begets violence. It could be the other way around. It's just easier to do the wrong thing. It's easier to do the bad thing.
But a counterpoint, in a dark room, one candle can light the whole place.
That's a very good concept.
You just got to be that one golden retriever. Then everyone else can be lifted up by you.
Yeah.
Even if it feels fake to you. That imposter syndrome that we talked about briefly. It doesn't have to feel like I'm truthfully this great, awesome person. But if you think that, then I may as well think that.
Yep. And if I'm willing to tell you about your successes and how you made me feel and how you helped me, then it actually starts to grow inside of you as an individual.
Yeah, it's weird. You need external validation of yourself at times.
Mm-hmm. Well, man, I'm like stoked and I want to continue this, but unfortunately we're starting to run out of time. So can you tell the people out there that would want to find someone like you in their own area what it is that they should look for other than just a financial planner or a fiduciary?
I would say, honestly, look for reviews, look for referrals, ask your friends, ask your family. Most people know somebody in this line of work. They're not hard to find. And if they try to charge you for a first meeting, never take that. If someone's going to tell you they got to pay money to consult with you, that's just silly. They don't even know what they're dealing with.
Okay.
So get that first meeting, vet them out, see if it's a good fit. Because at the end of the day, it's an advisor. It's not transactional. It's for life, at least ideally.
Right. All right. And so if people want to contact you specifically, is there a way that they could do that?
They can email me. They can call me.
And how would they go about that?
My email is ian@iliadwealth.com.
All right, you're going to find that in the comments.
It's going to be attached.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I'm not going to rattle it out for you here.
Hey, man, it's been a pleasure having you on here. And I'm glad that you are locked in arms with me on wanting men to be the best versions of themselves. I'm glad that I have found someone as a combat in arms to combat the idea of toxic masculinity.
Right.
Because in reality, masculinity, or toxic masculinity, that is the lack of masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And the lack of masculinity is rooted in the lack of self-confidence, insecurities, the inability to control one's emotions.
Absolutely.
And if you like this podcast and you actually want to find more, go to fitanddapper.com and send me a message, and I'd be happy to talk to you. I'd be happy to set up a conversation like this to help you become the best versions of yourself. And thank you for joining us at the Man Up and Own It podcast.